So a lot of things recently, from TikToks to Twitter posts to random memes, have been reminding me about a wonderful series. One where everyone is dashing and no one is normal. Where some of the most powerful forces in the series, and most of anime by that matter, are your average looking high schoolers. Let's talk about Medaka Box. Now, Medaka Box is a manga that debuted back in 2009, with its end being in 2013, alongside an anime premiering and ending with 2 seasons in 2012. Now, to be honest, there wasn't really a lot of talk about the series, and the anime gained a tad bit of hype with the fight in its 13th episode, gaining a lot of traction for its visuals and its tone switch, which we'll get into in a minute. The anime did moderately well, garnering 2 seasons with possible setup for a 3rd season, but ultimately nothing happened with that, which is sad since the meat and potatoes of the series really shows during its 3rd arc, and the anime only covers the prologue and the first 2 arcs. The manga did better in popularity, but still ended as one of the series that fell under the radar in terms of interest. It's definitely slow in its start, as it takes its time setting up its characters and premise, all while setting the president as a funny rom-com with a problem of the weak format with wacky gags involving the main cast. There's a big payoff for waiting after the prologue, as things start to ramp up in action with the usual power battles you'll find in your typical shonen manga. Now, I mentioned shonen despite it being a rom-com, but that's because it plays a large role in the core of its story. Alright, let's get an understanding of the story and its characters. Now, there's a good amount of characters, but for this video, we'll be highlighting more of its main cast and important characters. High school student Medaka Kurakami has always had a dying need to help people in any capacity possible, even if they didn't even ask for it. Be it friend, foe, or animal, she's always there to help. And one can see how this can be problematic in some cases, so childhood friend Zenkichi Hitayoshi is there to rein her in when things get a little antsy. Medaka decides the best way to be of help is to become the student council president, which she achieves with little effort due to her unnatural charm and charisma. After she pretty much gives Zenkichi no other choice but to be her general of affairs, they set out to become the driving force and source of hope for Honikawa Academy. She sets up her student council request box, or the Medaka box, to receive and complete tasks and requests placed by the students of the academy. These range from dealing with issues with the Kendo Club, helping girls with love advice, or helping some of the sports clubs with their competitions. One thing we need to go over here in terms of how she helps is that Medaka is a tad bit superhuman. She's the pedigree of human athletic ability and academic knowledge to a grade that only can be seen as perfect, not to mention the natural attraction that people have to her. Let's put a pin in that for right now, because that information is very important for later on. Through these requests, she actually gains more members of her student council, such as Kokei Akane, former judo club member, middle school classmate of Zenkichi and Medaka, and Zenkichi's love rival looking for Medaka's affection, who joins as the secretary. They also gain Mogana Kikajima, a member of the swim club who has a huge obsession of securing the bag, so she decides to be the treasurer. And with all of them working together, they are able to make a huge impact in the school. Now, at first it seems like a tame rom-com that may involve some crazy situations, but it gets a whole lot crazier. Through their antics, though helpful, they gain the attention of the disciplinary committee, who sees their helping as disrupting the order around the school, and the captain Uzun is not having it. The disciplinary committee ends up punishing students with heavier restrictions, which in turn starts to bother Medaka, who only wants to create peace. One thing leads to another, a chick with handcuffs ends up hurting people, and then Uzun and Medaka are starting to clash. And it's at this point that its shonen side starts to show. This is where all the superhuman feats and abilities we see Medaka perform come to fruition, as well as introduce abilities as a concept for the story and the abilities others have as well. For instance, Uzun, the captain of the disciplinary committee, is a genius prodigy from the Invisible Class 13. This class is a special class that houses only the elite or the abnormal in both academics and ability. And I don't mean aptitude. Uzun's ability, or abnormality as they are called, is linked to his supernatural intelligence, which he used to make special super bounce balls that not only bounce at crazy fast speeds, but are also filled with an explosive compound. Medaka is also a part of this class and has a couple abnormalities herself, such as the ability to copy and perfect any and all skills that she sees, and a transformed state that increases her abilities several times. And if you can't tell by now, Medaka is 100% certainly the main character, and believe me, that theme shows very, very apparent. Uzun decides to attack the student council room, and in this interaction is where we see Medaka fully realize her destiny as a shonen protagonist. Not only does she save all of her friends from a massive explosion caused by Uzun's super bounce balls, she also does the shonen trope of tanking all the damage in order to save her friends. Their fight turns into a huge power battle, which ends with Medaka awakening into her powerful war god mode, or essentially turning Super Saiyan to win the battle. From this point on, it loses its premise as a rom-com and becomes a battle manga, expanding on its overall story and theme. And speaking of theme, alright, now this is where it gets fun. For a lot of people who have only watched the anime, they only see the surface of Medaka Box and not what it's going for. Medaka Box is essentially a parody of the classic shonen tropes and style of Shonen Jump manga. This becomes extremely apparent with the introduction of characters like Best Boy and Worst Boy Kumagawa Misayogi and Naijimi Aijimi. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes saying Japanese names is a pain. It really is. These particular characters bring in the series' fourth wall breaks, as they are aware of the weekly Shonen Jump and its very series and protagonists, even carrying around issues of said manga. Kumagawa, being one of the larger antagonists of this series, is the biggest offender, considering his whole ideal as being the usurper to the idea of the main protag, which understandably is Medaka. He wants to show that even the greatest loser can become the main protagonist. With this revelation, you start to see the commentary through the arcs before that the author is starting to make. The author paints Medaka as the pinnacle of perfection, whose main ability is essentially being the main protag, being the center of attention and overcoming all odds while growing her power. She's seen as one with no flaws, when in actuality she has some of the biggest flaws of the series, like her inability to emphasize with people or read the room, never knowing when not to overstep her boundaries due to her overbearing nature. Over time, she becomes a backburner character for Zenkichi or even Kumagawa, showing us that the bland main character doesn't have to be the main driving force of the story. And while I know in most stories that's usually the idea unintentionally, the author brings it to the surface, basically saying she is the way she is on purpose. That's her prime function. And the world around her wants to put that in check. Hell, even Naijimi, who's seen as an outside force in the same scale as a god, manipulated reality so that the world operated as a rom-com and not your average shonen manga, as she hates them. Now mind you, Naijimi's actions towards Medaka is only to help her overcome her weaknesses, so that way she becomes the perfect opponent for basically a calamity that can destroy the world. We're not going to get into that. Now the anime, which let's admit is usually the best exposure for any manga series, never got to make it to that revelation besides small parts of an OVA. Maybe interest would have been higher if it did, but it should get more praise and recognition for how they handle its self-awareness while still operating as a power manga. Now, the power themselves are one of my favorite parts of the series, and in my opinion are stupidly structured, but still manage to be so much fun. So the power system works as follows. It's very simple. Skills that are beyond the normal human capability or superhuman ability is seen as an abnormality. These skills are usually an internal power that the user controls and is rarely seen as an external power that can be used. Now I just want to clarify that you can have a skill without having an abnormality. There are definitely still very normal people without extraterrestrial superpowers that have very ridiculous skills, but just because you have a skill doesn't mean you have an abnormality. Just want to make that clear. Now, users of abilities that are classified as abnormalities are known as abnormals, a very on-the-nose title. Some examples of abnormalities are Medaka's The End, which allows her to learn and perfect any skill she sees, or Zenkichi's Parasite Eyes, which gives him the ability to see through someone else's view. Minuses are where we get into the crazy shit. Minuses are abnormals whose minds have become twisted, so their abnormalities either manifest or evolve from a positive ability to a negative ability, hence a minus. Their abilities are usually more external and break logic or reality as a whole. The most notable is Kumagawa's famous ability, and you've probably seen it in your favorite anime debates of can he beat Goku? All fiction. Mind you, this ability is completely busted in all conceivable ways. This is also the part where I gush about Kumagawa, as he's one of my favorite anime characters of all time. All fiction gives the user the ability to erase any and all things from existence. There is no drawback. There is no cooldown, no activation, nothing. It just works. And when I say anything, I mean anything. He has been seen to erase things ranging from normal everyday objects to the concept of color, to memories, to even the sense of eyesight. Not to mention, on top of his superhuman durability, if he were to die, all fiction auto-activates to erase his death entirely, also wiping away all damage taken as well. Not to mention, his original abnormality that he had gave him the ability to take away your abnormalities or abilities or skills, basically making you back to zero or on his same physical level. I could literally talk about Kumagawa for an entire video, but I'm not going to do that today. But if you want that, let me know down below. Now, there are other more tame minus abilities such as fire and ice, which gives the user the ability to manipulate their body temperature higher or lower to be able to project ice or fire. Lastly are styles, which are a mode transformation that a user can take to enhance their own abilities or manipulate the environment or people around them. A good example of the craziness of styles is the use of contradictory conjunction, a style used by multiple people including Zenkichi that allows the impossible to be possible, materializing the lowest possible situation or outcome. Now there are literally hundreds, thousands, and even millions of more abilities, minuses, or skills that can be used, as is seen with Naijimi, who has the ability to use over 12 quadrillion skills and abilities. There's a ton of things that happen in this ridiculous manga, whether it's the enormous power battles or just the deeper story moments that will keep you interested all the way through. It's amazing how the author can make such a narrative that is essentially a parody into such a compelling and self-aware story that is enjoyable for those looking for a mindless battle manga, or even those looking for a more in-depth tale to read through. I really hope this is a series that can get a resurgence in popularity and more interest, because I feel it needs more love and recognition. It may not be for everyone, and it can be slow to start, but if you can make it through the setup arc, I promise you are in for a wonderful ride. But as always, I want to hear what you guys think. Have you guys heard of Medaka Box before? Is this your first time? Let us know in the comments down below. And of course, if you guys really like the video, make sure to drop us a like, and if you're feeling really frisky, drop us a sub. But of course, I've been Gizmo. This is WeebNClean. Remember to stay clean, and I'll catch you next time.